Milano Rhyme has to be seen as a key person, as a theoretician and thinker that is helping us to define the Black Arts movement. Okay? And what happened? When you go back in the 1960s, and this is how, so you all got the everything, got nice little devices. Back then, we had the paperback books that we put in our pocket. So you talk to us and say, hey, sister, this is what Malcolm said. You say that. You know, Fanon, you had this. And then you had what we had in our pockets, the quotable Ron Karanga. And what happened, Karanga, I have it, Karanga, because of quotable Karanga, and it was easy, sort of like a, Diet Light, what happened is a way of getting your blackness like instant. You see, so all you had to do was memorize these things, like the back of a Black Panther paper. Those points, then you're good to go, right? But that's dangerous because you guys are in the classroom. And that's dangerous in terms of movement. And if you look at some of the statements that's in this quotable Quran, I'll just throw out two of them as I'll read this, share with you. You can see how they became problematic for an entire generation. Let's go to these. Okay, the first one. Black art must be for the people, by the people, and from the people. That is to say, it must be functional, collective, and committed. Okay? Now look at this next quote. Art, for art's sake, is an invalid concept. All art reflects the value system from which it comes. That's another one. Okay, I feel like this one. There is no art in the world you should have to go to school to appreciate. You don't need a Howard degree to understand Jacob Artist. Okay, so you go to the Phillips collection and say, I don't understand this. What's this Romeo Bearden doing? You don't really need. Then if it takes you that long to understand it, then what's happening? Romeo Bearden and Jacob Lawrence must be wrong. Not you, because they should create work that is understanding for the people, okay? Now the one, here's it is. All art must be revolutionary. And in being revolutionary, it must be collective, committing, and focused. See the word revolution? Art must be revolutionary, okay? And this is it. There's another thing in here I find where they just totally dismiss the blues, but that's another term paper. But these little quotes here become a key foundation for when we begin to say, okay, what is this Black arts movement? Okay, what is Black art? Here now comes a discussion about the Black aesthetic, okay? So giving you an example, how do you define Blackness? Okay? So for example, you hear some singer, you say, well, is that person white or black? You don't know. Okay? Is there a form or structure that you say, okay, I know that that's a black table because it's got 5 legs? You see what I'm saying? Something that's concrete. Okay? Or something that is uniquely black. Okay? And this is where another person who comes in a little later in the movement is Dr. Stephen Henderson. Because what happens is that when you look at his book that comes out, another important anthology, Understanding New Black Poetry, in his introduction, he's looking at things as structure. Is there something that's black that is definitely black and we know the structure? That's where he goes to the blues. You know that the blues is linked directly to the black experience. Okay? No slavery, no middle passage, no blues. You see what I'm saying? That's our gift. And it has a structure. Okay? Everything's there that you can say, okay, this is a blues poem. Okay? This is a blues aesthetic. So now you begin to see, as the 60s moves into the 70s, into the 80s, it becomes a question, are we black or blue? You see? Those have become the key question. But what happens, the artists are key in trying to define an art form. But at the same time, they cannot ignore what's happening politically. Okay? So this is, for example, when you say, okay, what leads up to the Black Arts Movement? If you take my date of the beginning in 64, then you've got to say, okay, what happened before? Same way I was saying about the Harlem Renaissance. What happened the decade before? Well, key things. One of the things the Cuban Revolution, and you see a direct link with the Leroy Jones Baraka going there. Another key event that radicalizes people is the bombing of the Birmingham church. Okay? And we sometimes think of just the bombing and the 4 girls being killed, but you know what is the real sad part about it? Is that it comes 18 days after the March on Washington. So you can see that there was a high and then a low, okay? And the death of those 4 little girls have a definite impact on people that we will see later on. If I'm not mistaken, Condoleezza Rice, Angela Davis, these are like the family sort of connection there, okay? And you can say that those deaths are almost similar to Emmett Till's day. Okay, but with the bombing, what happens is that it's little girls, it's innocent kids, and it's also in a sacred place, the church. See, just like we saw in Charleston, when you go into a church and shoot people up, okay, then you have to say there's a problem here. You know those Godfather movies, right? You know, God lets you now, and there's a code. I will kill you, but I will not kill your children. You know, there's a code. You know what I'm saying? You know, I mean, I'll blow you. If you were driving to Howard and you had your kids in the back seat, I wouldn't detonate the bomb. You know what I'm saying? You know, you get out. you know, I shoot you. But you know what I'm saying? There's a code even among criminals. You see? And somebody said, wait, if you are going to do this, you're going to blow up the little churches. I'm not going to do that. Okay? Now, one person, key to the Black Arts Movement, who will write a very important poem about the bombing of that church is the poet and publisher Dudley Randall. Okay, and Dudley Randall will be key because when we talk about this Black Arts Movement, someone has to be responsible for getting the poems and stuff out to the people, and that becomes Dudley Randall with his Birdside Press. And so when you look at all of the Black Arts Movement poets that begin to emerge, look at the dates between 1966 and say 1969. Nikki Giovanni, Sonia Sanchez, all of them are coming out of Birdside Press. Okay? And then the person who will make a real transformation and really build up the press is Gwendolyn Brooks, who will leave a white publishing company and give her work to Dudley Randall. And that's a major movement, and that's a major commitment. Okay? And then when you look at Gwendolyn Brooks, just as a woman, right? The radicalization of Gwendolyn Brooks, just look at her here. When she gets her afro, okay, and just look at her work during the Black Arts Movement. And she received a lot of criticism, especially from white critics. Well, you know, when we gave Ms. Brooks the Pulitzer Prize, her work was such formal, and we just love those sonnets. And what's this black influence on her work? I just don't understand it. It's just filled with anger and hatred and rage. Give me back the Pulitzer. Right? I mean, and you know, when you look at black artists, even black athletes, making these key decisions, okay, without being pushed to do it, but on their own, okay, then you begin to see how important they are. One person who's still living, I have the highest regard for, is Jim Brown. Okay, you talking about Muhammad Ali? The other person is Jim Brown. Now, let me tell you, this is Sunday, right? If there's football going on in the room, right? Let me tell you about Jim Brown. Jim Brown, I mean, back in the day when the Cleveland Brown football team was winning games, right? The quarterback was Frank Ryan, right? Here's Frank Ryan, right? Hikes the ball, right? Jim Brown back here, right? And there's a blitz. They go right past Jim Brown and tackle Frank Ryan. They asked Jim Brown, but why don't you block? You know, well, you don't pay. And Jim Brown said, they don't pay me to block. And if you ever see Jim Brown run, Jim Brown, this footage, he's running backwards, man. He's running backwards, people back. And then he had this thing where you tackle him, right? Now, he couldn't play with Tom Brady in this hurry-up offense. You can't do that because he would always be offside. Jim Brown would get up, slow, and go back. You know? That's how he had that thing. And what I didn't realize is that he quit at the top of his career. And I didn't find out what he quit for until this year. He was over in England filming The Dirty Dozen movie, because he was in a movie. And the owner of Brown told him, hey, wait, football, get back over here. And Jim Brown said, oh, no, man. Now, I thought he wanted to make a movie career. No, it was the fact that somebody said, you better get your butt, get out of here. Jim Brown said, you don't treat me like that. And this is back then. You see? So when you look at this Black Arts Movement, you've got to look at all these events and these individuals. You know, Cassius Clay, Jim Brown, all these individuals, and then these events like the Birmingham Jail, the Harlem, the riots, okay? Now, you move past 65, you're into 66, and that's when you get the Black Power. You find little Willie Ricks running around here. You know Willie Ricks. Everybody said, I don't know Willie Ricks, but Willie Ricks is the one that's... if you want to say that. But what happened is that Willie Ricks is the one in 66 after that Meredith March, fell, and he's the one that gets the crowd up, and then Stokely Carmichael Plummetry hops on and said, and you get that so in pool. And 66 becomes key, okay? And then 67, all hell breaks loose. The best documentation of 1967 and the scope of all the riots and almost all the cities across the United States is the book Black Awakening in Capitalist America by Robert Allen. That's a good account of what was happening in terms of all the cities. But then we reached the key point, which is 1968. But let me go back and do something which is important, because I'll go back to 65. Because, as I mentioned about Barack going to Cuba and then coming back and listening to Malcolm X in a different light, let's look at Malcolm X. And I mentioned he was not in Harlem when the Harlem Riot was taking place. But when Malcolm X is assassinated and killed in February 65, this is where art comes in. The artist elevates Malcolm X to an iconic status. And who elevates Malcolm X to an iconic status? Ossie Davis. Ossie Davis gets the eulogy. Okay? If you go, I don't think I have it. Yeah. If you go to the eulogy of Malcolm X by Ossie Davis, every way you see Malcolm X is in the eulogy. So if you want to say about this whole thing about manhood, Malcolm was a man, or the black shining prince, all of that comes from the eulogy. But there's one problem with the eulogy. You know what that is? How many of you ever given a eulogy at a funeral? Well, that's good. That shows you that. You see, we should tell Donald Trump this. You see, there are people that's not all the shooting. Some people have never given a eulogy. Just joking. But you see how the stereotypes occur. Okay, what happens if you do a eulogy? You know you're really summing up the essence of a person. You're really sending that thing. This is a beautiful eulogy by Ossie Davis. This should be taught in every single class. But there's one thing missing. What do you think's missing?
Revolution.
No.
No?
Mm-mm. Now, he actually goes through the whole thing that, he says in here that you respond because you associated with all the anger and stuff. And he talks about, you never could associate Malcolm with that. Okay? That was not what you associated with. The key thing that's missing from the eulogy is that there is no reference to Islam. There's no reference to Islam at all. Which is key to, in fact, if we don't include Islam in the eulogy, we're dealing with Malcolm Little. You see? And then the other thing to remember is that Malcolm has 2 funerals. You see? He has 2 funerals. So he's actually buried as Malcolm X, but then he's actually buried as El-Haj Malik al-Shabazz. You see? And that's why when we teach Malcolm, we teach the Malcolm that we want. You see? But Malcolm had 2 funerals. But the eulogy makes no reference, as if he just popped up. I mean, no reference. Because of how he shot, he was killed. You can't mention it in the Nation of Islam. But you mention nothing until you authorize Islam, which to me is key until you're going to eulogize somebody. Okay? But the key thing also with the eulogy, and Ozzy will talk about this, and you can go online and find this, why he eulogized Malcolm X. And it had a lot to do with the fact that Malcolm was a man. And even though Ozzy, who was a popular actor at that time, had a lot to lose, he felt he was a man, and by right, he had to do this. And that just shows you, what Malcolm X meant. If you look at the interview with Coretta King, okay, Coretta King, and you saw this in the movie Selma, they never really met, except here. See, let's bring the dates in. You remember Mookie, the Spike Lee movie, Do the Right Thing? You remember what was it? Smiling? Remember that movie? You remember that. And it was the picture of Malcolm, right, and Martin Luther King. Now, you're the photographer. You know what's happening. If you brought Donald Trump in here right now, nobody will get pictures. You know what I'm saying? I'm not me, man. My tuition is upstate. And I remember, man, like Farrakhan would be coming in and nobody, Salman Rushdie, nobody like that. So when you see a photograph, the key thing is that the picture exists. You see? Now let me show you something. Now, you like jazz. This is my little side. I come back to the melody. You see, Michelle Obama had an impact this past week. Nobody picked this up. She ain't taking them pictures. You ain't taking them pictures with her. See, but she did something else. Remember how Laura and Joy invite into the White House? No, you come around back. You don't realize they came around back. The last person to come around back, and I'm going to say, was Netanyahu. You know Barack talk like Netanyahu. He came around back. Subtle things like that. She's not going to get a picture. You see that little thing? No, she's not doing that. But when you look at this picture, of Malcolm X and Martin Luther King, the fact that the picture takes place, that they're not afraid to be with each other. And then what happens when you look at the photograph? They're laughing and smiling. And when you go and find the transcript, Malcolm's telling a joke. And he's saying, boy, you will get a lot of trouble now. That king is laughing. But you could see the picture takes place. See? Now, let me tell you what I want. Maybe you guys can find this out. If you ever get a chance, and you don't love black women here, if you ever get a chance, remember this, please remember this. I'll leave my email and you can send me the answers. I want to find out what George Bush is saying to Michelle Obama when he's leaving the White House on the lawn. Because you know how that black woman, like that deep laugh? If you think as they go into the helicopter, right? George is like saying something, and Michelle is bending over, and then he hits her again. Whatever he was saying was hilarious. I still want to know what that is. But when you go back to this picture of Martin Luther King and Malcolm X, the fact that it's together, it means that you as teachers can't teach the movement as if it's this and that. You see? And that's how we teach it. We don't teach these extremes. I'll give you an example. Here's Du Bois. Here's Booker T. Washington. Okay, who's in the middle? Another whole bunch of books that never move. Kelly Miller. Okay, you know the books ain't move, right? Okay, so you really should be teaching Du Bois, Kelly Miller, Booker T. Washington, just to get the full picture. You see? And that's it. Now, what I'm going to do? I'm going to stop here so you can ask me questions. I can go on this for another couple hours. Okay.
Well, this has been a wonderful entry into this conversation, and I'll just take a moment. My name is Dr. Shauna Morgan-Curlew of the English Department, and this is the Black Power Chronicles interview with E. Ethelbert Miller, November 13, 2016. And before we go into questions, I owe you an introduction, so the students have a broader sense of this your resonance here. E. Ethelbert Miller is a writer and literary activist. He is the author of numerous collections of poems and 2 memoirs, and the board chair of the Institute for Policy Studies. For 14 years, Miller has been the editor of Poet Lore, the oldest poetry magazine published in the United States. He was awarded an honorary degree of Doctor of Literature in 1996 by Emory and Henry College. In April 2015, Miller was inducted into the Washington, D.C. Hall of Fame. In 2016, he received the AWP George Garrett Award for Outstanding Community Service in Literature and the D.C. Mayor's Arts Award for Distinguished Honor. His most recent book is The Collected Poems of E. Ethelbert Miller, edited by Kirsten Porter and published by Willow Books. Just another round of applause. And we do have some questions, and I
was going to start with the baseline. In terms of DC Black Power, one of the initiatives is to kind of uncover the local history of the movement. What you've given us is a broad overview. But what specifically was it about DC and Black Power that you would want us to understand in relationship to the Black Arts movement?
Good question. What I do, I'll take it back. I'm 17 years old, and I graduated from high school very early in the South Bronx. I went to Columbus High School. I got a job down in Greenwich Village at a place called Bookazine, which was a wholesale book company. I'm 17 years old, first little job I had, and I met a number of African Americans, sort of like big brothers to me. And these are individuals who were coming up from Washington, D.C. To New York City, to Bookazine to get their books. And they were all attached to the Drummond Square bookstore here. One of the other things we're dealing with, like the Black Arts movement, the Black Power period, many cities, major cities, had a key bookstore. So, like, for example, in New York, a key bookstore was in Mr. Michaud's bookstore, 125th Street National Memorial Bookstore. But for me, and at that time, that's how I met Mr. Michaud, because he was getting his books to take up to the store in Harlem. But I also met these guys who were coming up from D.C., from Drummond Square. And I remember clearly, because they were so nice to me, Charlie Cobb, Cortland Cox, Tony Gittins. I'm assuming maybe I might have met Arthur Featherstone, but these are the guys that I was meeting, and they were like race men. I didn't really realize that because, I really was in tune with the movement, and it wasn't until when I came to D.C. And I packed a few books. The 2 books I packed was Black Power by Stephen Henderson, and Understanding the Medium is the Messiah by Marshall McLuhan. I was into Marshall McLuhan. When I got down here, I actually went to German Spirit Bookstore because I was doing the invoices. Okay, let me see the store. And I think at that time they were located maybe like 14th Fairmont and 14th in Euclid. And in there, working at the store at that time was Kojo Namdi, Ivy Young. Got to know those individuals. Across the street there was the Center for Black Education. This would get very important for Howard University because at that time, people like Jimmy Garrett was involved, and right around 68, 69, on the campus of Howard University in 69 is the Total Black University Conference. And that's very important. If you want to know a lot about that, a person who has a lot of the documents is probably Ackland Lynch. If you're walking around the city, you see all this Lynch, Jair Lynch, property and stuff like that. His father's Ackland Lynch, But Ackland Lynch was one of the radical professors at Howard. And somebody's looking at Howard at this time. Howard University, and I'm coming in the fall of 68, right before I come to here, is Howard has one of the most successful student movements, okay? And this is why when you go back and you study in the 1960s, people look at the student movement and they always think about Berkeley or Mark Ward at Columbia University. But Howard had the most successful student protest. Up at Howard, in the file cabinet, I put together a conference maybe in about 1978, and I brought everybody back together. At that time, Michael Harris, Ackland Lynch, a lot of them looking back at the student movement. The movement was so important that other schools was calling Howard to find out how things could be done. And one of the beautiful things about the Howard movement, there was no property damage or anything like that. The demands were met. Okay. The key thing that when we look at that student movement at Howard is the fact that one of the major demands was the abolition of ROTC. Okay? So when you say that, you don't look at the movement as being this black movement, we want an Afro-American Studies Department, things like that. That would happen. But the key thing is you see it's an anti-war movement. Vietnam's going on, and people do not want to. It was mandatory. If you were a young man, okay, and you got accepted to Howard University, you were accepted ROTC. It's mandatory. Okay? Things like freshman assembly was mandatory. Okay? So all these issues were taking place when I came there right after. And the Towards the Black University Conference was key because at that time people wanted to rename Howard University. Somebody on the cultural night that was in the gym, all the angry brothers were there, letting people in, and they wouldn't let Sterling Brown in because they thought he was white. These things do happen, and that was my introduction to Ron Karenga, and it taught me something back then. Maybe you figure this out. How come all American dancers have these Mike Tyson voices? So Karenga, what we need is an ideology. See, brother, you're laughing. The reason why he's laughing is because he doesn't know himself. If he knew himself, he wouldn't, that type of thing, right? Or you're young and you got that picture and that wicked cheer, Huey Newton, at that sense of black masculinity, your sister, and if they just let that brother out, I could get married. You got all that stuff happening, and then you lets out and how are your people? He has a high voice. So we're having these images. See, when you deal with the whole mind, it's funny. It's like Mike Tyson will hit you hard, but Mike got that nice little voice, hey, I'll hit you, I'll knock you out. And I never figured this out, man. And I'm saying this because our movement has to be discussed on these levels, okay? Because something has to do with how you're shaped. Okay? And this is where we haven't got into analyzing people from a certain perspective. Okay? The same way you got to analyze Trump. Something's wrong. You're from the here, something's wrong. But nobody wants to say. And see, when I go back to the Black Lives Movement, I knew Elgin Cleveland was crazy. I knew Elgin Cleveland was crazy. I can go down the list, especially some of the Black Panther Party people. They were crazy. Max Stanford, they were crazy. Okay, they ran amok in the women's dorm and stuff like that back then. It's just they were crazy. Some were good people, but when you study this movement, okay, you can't romanticize it. You have to, at this point, you have to ask the critical questions. Okay, And what I learned, and this took me, and you're responsible for this, Karen. What happened, this a few years ago, I think when you started this project up, with the SNCC, I think you had a meeting in the browsing room. And I'd come back from lunch, and I looked in the browsing room. I remember 11 people in there. And like, everybody was there. You know, Bob Moses, everybody, Bernice Reagan. And I looked in there, and I said, wow, these people changed the South, man. I mean, you sit there and take data. These people changed the South. And then what you saw, you could feel the energy. There was this degree of humility. And you could see there was a closeness. You know, like how you bring like a team back together. Yeah, we won back in 1985. You know what I'm saying? You know, we went all the way. It had that sort of closeness, you know, like how, you know, if you were, I never was in the service, but you get that thing where you've been through something with people. And I guess you can see that in their sororities and your place with somebody. Or that, and this is why I always felt at Howard University, and it did change. I was insisting on it, that if you came in with your class and you were like too crazy, you didn't take gym or fail swimming because you want to mess up your hair, you still should graduate with your class, okay? Because what happens, who knows that you're 2 credits short? And it's so important that these are people that you came in with. Even though you get your degree, Mark, it's not the same. You like probably say, well, mail my degree. See? But that whole bond, and this is what you get in terms of at historic high school. You know, I used to tell people this back then. Everybody who graduates from Howard have a lifetime subscription to Jet Magazine. You know, just so you know what's going on. You know, because the thing that would happen, if you stay in touch, you know, it's different now because you go online and stuff like that. But at one time, that's how you could document what was going on. And how was that important for me? And I remember my first month there, and I bumped into Stokely Carmichael. You know, you're reading, and then you bumped into them. And that was the beauty of probably being at Howard University. Because I remember in 1974, me and my friend Amos Bolton, we were touring the South. And we went to Jackson, there wasn't schools like that in Mississippi. You know, Alcorn State, places like that. And I remember we were doing a talk like this. And we asked the students, like, could you name some black poets? And when they were like, Phyllis Wheatley, you know what I mean? Like, you know, I mean, we were talking about the Black Arts Movement, you know, and she's a Phyllis Wheatley. They ain't never seen Soul Science yet. You know what I'm saying? Look at you, but they were still at that. See, and that's why you can't take this movement and realize that some places, there's a certain hot spot, and some spots they miss. Okay? I was visiting professor out of UNLV back around 94, and my students, well, I couldn't get past the Jerry curls, number one. I couldn't. I said, well, you guys are out here. But I noticed it's like he said, hey, you guys got Jerry curls? I mean, that went out with what movie? And then I remember one of my students walked me to the post office. I was mailing some letters across the campus from UNLV. And she said something because she's in the black class. But when they going to put some black people on stamps? I said, baby, you never saw a black person on a stamp? And she hadn't. You see? And this is the thing to realize. And it probably will increase. There's certain things that you're in parts of the United States, you're not going to see. Okay? And this is what happens with sometimes black movies. You know, this is why what happens. You're a filmmaker. And this happens to Spike Lee. You have a good film, it's not going to show on that many screens. Okay? That's why, you know, when you look up, it doesn't gross as much as the other, because it's not on that many screens. In some neighborhoods, you're not going to see certain movies. With the natural movie, the perfect, they ain't going to show some. You may have to come to Howard and see the movie, and go home and tell somebody about wait for Netflix or something, but you're not going to see it screen. And that's when you look at this Black Arts Movement, look at how things are disseminated across the country. There's
something that you mentioned that I think we need to capture, especially for this city. You talked about how the students wanted to rename the institution. Name it for whom, and why was he so critical in terms of framing the Black Arts Movement, not only for Howard students, but for people in this city?
They wanted to rename it after Sterling Brown. It's already a Brown University. But that was the name that came out. They wanted to name it after Sterling Brown. You know, that becomes very interesting. I remember a number of years ago, the great poet, Simon Ortez, Native American poet. You know, he visited me, you know, at Howard, and that we walked in the Founders Library. He said, "Oh, is that General Howard?" And he couldn't believe it. He said, "This school's name is General Howard?" Because we know General Howard with the Freeman Bureau and things of that sort. But General Howard goes out west, and Native Americans have another position on General Howard. You see, so those are, hey, Eugene, how are you? Good to see you. I want to be like you. But you know, when you talk about the Black Arts Movement, yeah, I'm just talking about literature, but when you look at the images, what black visual artists did in terms of just giving us those images that change us, okay, it's so very important, you know. And that's a thing that when you look at movements like Afro-Cobra, or if you study the history of Howard University, and your husband, A.B. Spellman, back in, I think, in the 1970s, wrote an article in the Washington Post, which is still one of the best critiques, I think, of a Howard University faculty show. And basically what happens is that he highlighted something that when you walk at Howard University, you don't see. Almost everybody in that art department, visual art, had a national, international reputation. Okay? You can't do that. I don't know who's down in the math department counting numbers, but you cannot do that at one time, you know. And I think that when you look at the importance of the people coming through there, that needs to be in the curriculum. See? The same way under James Cheek. Okay? James Cheek had that project. There was two projects. One was the mural project. It was supposed to be murals in all the buildings. And then, I think, in Crafted Auditorium, they put, I forgot who the artists were, they had the leaders, Harriet Tubman and stuff like that. They took the leaders down and put like an Afro-Cobra. But you know, you got to stand on Georgia Avenue where they get your donuts from Ken and look over there to see it, you know. But everybody's they're taking the leaders down. But at one time, all the buildings at Howard University, in fact, if you're into visual art, you got the Hunt sculpture, you got, Catlett, and that needs to be taught, you see. I remember Brother Yao, who opened up Karibo Books, okay? When he was hiring people, he did something that we should do with how we look at the visual arts on Howard campus. When he was opening Karibo Books, hiring somebody, he would bring the person he wanted to hire back to Howard campus and say, look, right on the corner of 4th and I had a stand. We were selling cantaloupes and books. And if you're going to work for me, you need to know that, okay? No one should graduate from Howard University unless you actually physically, well, I'll say yes, touch the art. I know you're not supposed to do that at the time, but touch the art. And say, okay, I touched this sculpture by Hunt. This is the Catlett. Inside you've got, you know, the Jacob Lawrence, you know. I mean, you've got enough work that's just there. And sometimes it's just past. In fact, the one that shocked me just a few years ago was in a school social. It's like a Calder. You know what I mean? We got a lot of art that's visible. But then, this is where I come into critique. The poet Ted Jones, as he would spell his name Joans, Ted Jones. He would have it in the 50s, like rent a Negro. You know, rent a Negro for a party, you do that. Ted Jones, in maybe the 80s, came up on campus and he was looking for a very famous painting by the Afro-Cuban artist Wilfredo Lamb. And we go over to the art department, look for this Wilfredo Lamb. And this is what you have to fight in terms of protests and stuff. I wish we hadn't found the painting. Okay, I wish we had, because what happened was like leaning up against the thing, you know, no climate control, nothing, you know, it's just, it was like this, you know, and I said, wow, we've got these things and we're not taking care of it, you see, and this when you go down to the Black Arts Movement and Black Power, we were talking about building Black institutions and preservation of history and culture, and what happens is that to some point we fail, see, at some point we fail. This is why, when I joke with Tommy Hasley, you know, in his book, King Will and Me, because he talks about spending time in the Moreland Springs Art Center and reading and stuff. I think if we went and into the Moreland Springs Art Center, you can think about this right now. When you go into Founders Library, especially now, and you got to take it's hot, you're sweating, imagine if you're a book. Okay? You're sweating, imagine if you're a book, and you've been sitting there for how long? Okay? That, to me, is not good. Okay? And I say, I'm a literary activist, so my collection is in that house. And you can access my collection online. Okay? And people say, why did you give yourself to GW? Because one, I was on the board of the library of GW, and then also I created a literary archive, which they decided, oh, we want to do this. That's why my collection is over there. But what happens is that I look at the fact that you can access my stuff. See? Now, what I made sure I did, because looking at scholars coming along, I gave things to Howard University and didn't take with me. So I made sure all my stuff on Sterling Brown is at Howard. Okay? So if you come to Howard, you can go one place. Okay. If you go to the Moreland Springs Art Center, because it's being recorded, I'll document this. Nobody will say it. The Kwame Nkrumah collection is there because I put it there. Okay. You know, June Milne is still living. She was Kwame Nkrumah's secretary right after the coup. And so when Nkrumah was kicked out of Ghana, he set up a press, Panic Press. Drew Milne was in charge of it. Okay? I'm in touch with Drew Milne. Okay? And I go over to England, and Drew Milne wants to give all this stuff to Howard University. And I come back with all this, she wants to give this. And I get to Howard, like, there was no interest. And I had to go lobby, and there was no interest. And finally pushing, and it was just slow. And she had everything down to his diocese. And then Ethelbert made a decision, which I did. Mrs. Milne was going to turn over all of the copyright of Nkrumah's work to Howard University. Okay. Is this where we take the intermission? You know that Howard University Press doesn't exist anymore. Okay? So there's a horror story. Okay? If you look at Walter Rodney, close to Pat Rodney, okay, Howard University had the rights to, how you run to South Africa. Pat Rodney was trying to get her husband's rights so that Paul Coates was ready to do it, getting it back, trying to get it right back. No response. And you know what the joke was? Howard University didn't know, and people may not know this. Walter Rodney's sister's on Howard's campus. People don't know that. She plays a very low key. I know her well, And so what happened when they got into the real thing, I was the one pushing some people in administration. This woman needs her husband's work back. Okay, but then I also told him, I said, you may not be able to give it to her. Why? Because you might set a precedent. Okay? But what happens is that you may want to do certain things, and this goes back to the Black Power, Black Lives Movement. We wanted to build these institutions, but we didn't build them. Okay? And that's just something that you have to look at. See, this is 2016. If you want to build something, there's probably only two people around here who know how to raise the money. One is Lonnie Bunch, and one was like Howard Dodson, who know how to raise large something, especially Lonnie Bunch. Okay? But one of them, we have good ideas, okay, but we can't raise the money. Or we raise the money, and all the money is for salaries and not for showcase. You know what I'm saying? I'm going to pay myself first. And that's a problem. Or what happens, you have, like you did, somebody working really hard, dedicating their whole life, and then there's no baton. You see? There's nobody else that's going to work just as hard. You see? Sometimes when you see gentrification on these streets, it's because some of the kids didn't want the housing. You see? And some of these plays in there, you can figure out, like, look at the younger family and, raising in the sun. They got to get to the suburbs. It ain't changed into the younger family. And what happens, some people, that's all they have. The wealth is in the house, and the kids don't want the house. You see? And so the neighborhood changes like that. And those are sad stories. Or when you look at with the Black Arts Movement and Black Power, look at how this city changed because there was a generation of people empowering themselves that got into real estate. Okay? So they was just making money out of the suburbs. They didn't care what was happening to the neighborhood.
So the failure to preserve, to process, and to venerate those Howard things, whether they be symbolic, whether they be a text, or in individuals like Sterling Brown, just we lose the opportunity to do that. And there are some students here who belong to the Sterling Allen Brown English Society, and I wonder if you could. You mentioned your work on Sterling Brown, and I wonder if you could elaborate on his presence here, not just as a faculty member, but as a poet, sort of catalyzing or helping to catalyze that movement at that time.
What people know about Sterling Brown, I have a lot to do with that. If you go back and document when the Institute for Art and Humanities was created, Sterling Brown was a senior research. I was a junior. But it started before when I was a student at Howard University. I was in Cook Hall, and I was next door to Steve Jones. And Steve Jones was working with Margaret Burroughs, who had to do Sabo Museum in Chicago, and she wanted something from Sterling Brown, like his pipe or something. Right? So I went with Steve Jones over 1222 Curry Street with video equipment, because the Afro-American Studies Department was the first unit on Howard's campus that had video equipment. Okay? So I took the camera and we go over to see Mr. B, go to Sterling Brown's house. And, he started talking, you're coming back again, I got more stories. And so what happened, he got into it, and all of a sudden, we're shooting, and he's talking. Now, there's certain things he didn't want to talk about, well, turn the camera on, I told you. But what happened, we documented, we didn't have any I had no knowledge about all history and that, but I knew that this was what to do. Now, fast forward. Those tapes that I'm filming get transcribed. Joanne Gavin, who's at James Madison, has the first book because of these tapes. Okay, now I'm a literary activist. When you go over to 1222 Turner Street right now, there is a plaque on the house. And it says, not just about Sterling and Daisy, because Daisy was key to Sterling Brown's life. Okay? Put that plaque there. The artist Lou Stovall put that plaque there. Okay? And this is from me being a student, and I wouldn't be here if I had not walked across campus and heard Sterling Brown read. You know, I didn't know anything about poetry, so I went in. Somebody said, "Oh, there's women there? Okay." You go, you're a freshman, little beanie on your head. You don't know nobody because you can't sit next to somebody in the cafeteria. So, look, there's art. I'll go over there and meet. And it was that time. Then I got pulled in. You see, and then something began to happen in the course of years. When Sterling Brown was introduced and stuff, they would say, "Sterling Brown, he's a poet laureate." And Sterling Brown was a poet laureate the same way Meridian Hill is not Malcolm X Park. You know what I'm saying? It's to us. You know what I'm saying? But officially, you know what I'm saying? And what happened? Bless Marion Barry, Effie Barry, okay, who knew Sterling Brown. I mean, the only person who could get Sterling Brown out of his house was Effie Barry and maybe Betty Perry, who had a textile museum series over there. But Sterling wouldn't come out. And what happened? This is me in terms of how you honor your elders. Make them official. Okay? Make them the poet. And we push that through that path. And I tell you this. We had, it's funny, I remember this clearly. We had the ceremony up on Capitol Hill, right? And on Sterling Brown, we had Baraka come down from Newark to be the keynote speaker. They were new Baraka. And Baraka gets ill out here. Damn Nigerian cab driver couldn't find the Capitol. He's arguing about the Nigerian cab driver who can't find the Capitol. That's why he's late from the airport. It was hilarious. But in the midst of all of that, and keep in mind, when we talk about Sterling Brown, people go into his home and listen to his records, and people like Spellman and many people from SNCC, because there's pictures of that documented. And that's important. And so here is this high point in terms of Sterling Brown being finally honored. And I remember when we put him in that cab, and we had this little plaque, making point, he was so happy. It's like a older black woman voting for Obama. I lived all my life for this. You see, if you have a parent, grandmother, mother, you do this for them. And let me show you this, and this is a key person here. Fast forward to today. Carla Hayden is the head of the Library of Congress. Okay? Now, Carla and I, Carla and I became friends a long time ago back at Howard. That's why I met her, because we became good friends at Howard. All the librarians sit together. And what happened, I got to know Carla, I got to know Carla's mother, especially when they were in Baltimore. And Carla there was rumor about her taking this job like a couple years ago. But Carla's close to his only job and she's taking care of her mother. That's the first thing. And I bumped into her about a year ago. I got the pictures on my phone at the Baltimore Literary Festival. We were talking and asking, and it's that time to go. And I said to her, she said, "You're going to take that job if it's off to you?" She come back to me and said, "That's what we got to talk." And I said to her, as a mother said, "Look at your mother. You take this job. You're going to put a smile on your mother's face. Yeah, I know it's going to be hard. You're going to be commuting back and forth from Baltimore. But you're going to put a smile on her face." Fast forward to the footage, video that the White House released. They nominated her. And her mother's in the Oval Office with a Bible. And boy, when you see that, if you want to talk about the importance of Black president, you want to talk about Black families and being able to do that, that's what you want to do. And I'll tell you this, tie back to you people as students, okay? Some of you might be the first to go to college. I know I was. Okay? And this is why, remember I said about, you might be 2 credits short? Okay? I almost didn't graduate from Howard. I almost didn't graduate from Howard. I feel like economic income and that, something type of thing where it was economics, right? And what happens is that I call my mother and say, "I'm not going to graduate." And she's like, "I'm here. I'm going to graduate. I'm going to find a role from somebody, And for many households, they don't know what your major is, but it's that day, the sun's out, that captain down, and that's what it is, man. And I tell people, man, don't take that away from Black families, man. If somebody's 2 credits short, let them march. It's so important to have that photo. I mean, nobody wants to know that you got a mail order certificate 6 months later. You know what I'm saying? You want to be out there with your friends and stuff. That's it. You see? And when you see some of these pictures of things, if you can bring that happiness on the face of people that your family, that's part of the Black movement. That's part of the Black power. That's empowering your own family. Okay? Those are the pictures you want to hang and share with your own children and pass on to your grandkids. Those images, the same way I talk about that picture of Malcolm X and Martin Luther King. Yeah, we know that every household should have pictures like that. That when you see, you say, now I got a picture of my grandma. I never met her. She looked like Johnny Rehearsal. I keep her up there. I never met her. But it was the whole thing where I realized that in my family, the women dressed and carried themselves that way. And I need to be reminded.
The importance of lineage, right? Whether it be political, literary, or biological, familial lineages is so important to the movement.
It is.
There's a student question that's related to that. This one is from Kalia Peterson, who's a senior English major, French minor from Newark, New Jersey. And she asks, is it possible to argue that the seeds for the Black Arts movement were planted in the late 30s, early 40s, with the protest literature of writers such as Richard Wright, with his work, Blueprint for Negro Writing? Thinking about lineages, I think that's an important question.
Yeah, one of the things that when you go back to this essay by Larry Neal, one thing he mentioned, and I can quote it right here, and it has the back. Okay, this is what he says in the article back in 1969. We bear witness to a profound change in the way we now see ourselves in the world, and this has been an ongoing change. Okay? That's very important. It's been an ongoing change, and so he acknowledges this in the past. That's why what I do, and I share this with you, it is if something does happen in the 60s, and that term revolution becomes key. But in terms of consciousness, in terms of the importance of like African folklore, things of that. So there is that sort of sense of issue, protests and so. I mean, that's our what we inherit. I mean, we can find that. We don't want to confine every writer to write that way. We give people the freedom the same way. For example, and Entozaki says this best. We wouldn't confuse Wayne Shorter with Miles. You wouldn't confuse certain musicians. We want all our writers to sound alike. Okay? But what happens is that when you go back and look at Frank Marshall Davis, Sterling Brown, you find that same anger and rage. In fact, I gave a talk in Lincoln Theater. It's Creative Summit, and I knew because Alicia Garza was in the back. I was in the back, and I said, okay, I'm reading Sterling Brown because Sterling Brown has a number of poems about police brutality, and so it's not like a new issue popping up in our literature. Okay, and so that's why what happens is that in the classroom we have to know that chronology. Okay, but we also have to know that the political and social settings are completely different. And so this is where you get into Baraka talking about this like changing scene. But there is an ongoing movement, and this is why when you're sitting in the classroom, you have to realize that you're part of it. See, I just got finished doing last week this interview with Paul Buell. We did a long hour discussion on C.L.R. James. And Paul reminded me how much I had dealt with C.L.R. James. And when I would see C.L.R. James, what struck me? I'd be sitting there and saying, this guy talked to Trotsky. I was like, Trotsky. His name, like, somebody said God, okay, or somebody, and you're like, oh, yeah, what? But when you see that, and you realize it's kind of, that you're talking to somebody like that, I don't take that for anything. I mean, that's something where you say, okay, how does that play out? And sometimes within your family, you have individuals, that are that important that you have to remember that this is what your family's about. Okay? And I remember clearly Mae Miller, Kelly Miller's daughter, right? Who was also a key poet. In fact, what we tried to do, we wanted Mae Miller to be the second poet laureate of D.C. after Sterling died, but then Mae died. But Mae was funny because Mae was Kelly Miller's daughter, right? And she talked about how she was on a date. She was downtown, right? And the Kelly Miller family always sat down for dinner together. And she told her date, well, I got to be home at like 5 or whatever. And then she said, he didn't understand. Did you see the whole sort of thing of class? And then on this date, the Miller family sat down, and that's something in terms of, she upheld that, and Mae was a person, I brought Mae Miller up to campus. She had never been on our campus. Mae Miller and I did a reading, and that cemented our lives together, where people never knew whether we were mother, son, lovers, whatever. We always joked about it. We were Millers, you know. But what I learned from that woman, which is important, I learned a sense of this black middle sense class. See, I'm from the South Bronx, you know, where it's like hip hop and stuff coming out of graffiti, you know. So my whole thing of like cotillions and stuff and sororities and I did not know what. In fact, first week on campus, I went into the dining hall, Cocoa dining hall, and it was grits and stuff. Like, if you're on the meal plan, what's this? You know, because my friends from the West Indies, we weren't in there, you know, and so these things were new things to me. But within your family roots and history, you have to know this. I didn't know I was really West Indian until I came south. See? And I tell people when you don't know where you are, you see, all you have to remember is this: Frederick Douglass ran away from Maryland. That's all you need to know, okay? And so if you want to know where you are, you know, Frederick Douglass ran away from Maryland, okay? So if you want to talk about, if you can't get to Canada, at least get to East Orange or Newark, okay? But even that's a problem because that's a Woodrow Wilson state. So you might want to keep going until you get to some place where they would be planning the revolution up there in upstate New York where Frederick Douglass was at the time. You know, you want to do that. You've got to know that history and how it impacts on your family and how it impacts on who you want to be. You see? So all this black art stuff is meaningless unless you take it into your system. You see? You know, like food or vitamins so that you grow. Okay? And that's how it has to be in every household. You have to move. You know, my model is the main nose and a strong brand. Okay? I would not be here. And then I've got to mention like Haki Matabuti, you know, Don Lee. And these are people that mentored me. You know, I was blessed to have a lot of different mentors. You know, Stephen Henderson, Don Lee, you know, Julie Mayfield, you know, just a list of people. And my commitment as a literary activist is to make sure that their names were not forgotten. Okay? Like, for example, one name that gets forgotten, we talk a lot about Sterling Brown, we don't talk about Owen Dotson. Okay? If you take my name and link it to Vera Katz, I just interviewed Vera Katz, who's key in the drama point. We talk about the Black Arts Movement. Vera Katz, okay, has taught almost every single black actor or actress that you see from Empire to 42, Black Panther. She taught all those individuals, right? The first question I asked in the interview was, what was it like to be on the campus back in 1968, 69? And you know what she said? She said, well, you're one of the four people who spoke to me. and she said that not in a laughing way. She caught hell. You know, she was Jewish, she was this, and she was trying to teach people, you know, who didn't want to hear. But I tell you, her students, they love her. You know, she's got her memoir coming out, the introduction written by Felicia Rashad. You know, the Debbie Allen, whenever they would come to town, you know, they would come on the campus, spoke to the students, you know. And that's a person that affected historic black schools. Now, to show you this connection, this is important in terms of this movement. I do a lot of work with like different communities. One community is the Jewish community. And there was a woman who was also one of my members, I mentioned, Gabrielle Edgecombe. And she wrote a book called From the Swastika to Jim Crow. Okay? And what she was documenting were the Jews who fled Nazi Germany and came to the United States and found work in the South. Okay? And they found work in historic black schools. So if you take somebody like who's president of Howard University, Joyce Ladner, you see that some of these individuals, when they were at Tougaloo or they were at Spelman or Morehouse, they became in contact with people who not just Jewish, but they were also radical. And so sometimes that's how they introduced socialism, or new ideas, new way of seeing themselves. Important people like Howard Zinn, you know, have an impact on Spelman, and so you have that impact on Alice Walker. But when you're looking at our movement, the same way going back, I was talking about Leroy Jones, Mary Brock in Cuba. Okay, there's things in terms of, you know, here's Che Guevara, okay? Here's Fidel. They have an impact on it. Okay? And that's why when we look at our music and our art, the influence is coming from a lot of different places. When you go back to this Larry Neal article and define the Black Arts Movement, the key thing he says here very early is that liberation is impossible if we fail to see ourselves in more positive terms. Liberation is impossible if we fail to see ourselves in more positive terms. Forget about if we fail to see ourselves in more positive terms. Liberation is impossible. Liberation is a term that's very popular in the 1960s because you have that coming out of Vietnam. You have that coming out of Algeria. You have that liberation. See? So that's another word that you circle and say, wow, this was not what somebody was talking about years ago. This is new. The positive images are there, but it's liberation. You see? And then let me mention this other thing which opens up another door. He says here, Larry Neal says here, now along with the Black Power movement, they had been developing a movement among black artists. This movement we call the Black Arts. This movement in many ways is older than the current Black Power movement. It is primarily concerned with the cultural and spiritual liberation of black America. Let's underline this sentence. It is primarily concerned with the cultural and spiritual liberation of black America. As soon as you emphasize the spiritual liberation, right, then we have to begin to just look at the influence of Islam on the Black Arts movement. So if, for example, you're a visual artist and you design some of the books for some of the poets, you'll see a lot of starting crescent. Okay? You might see, Islamic, the design. Or look at all the people who began to take Muslim names, from sports figures, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, all this.
Howard becomes the Mecca?
Now Mecca, this is key. Howard is a Mecca. Where's that from?
A lot of people talk about its relationship in terms of Malcolm's Hodge.
No, see? Now, this is a game show. Howard is the Mecca. You know when I heard that, I said, okay, I'm a poet. Mecca, okay. That's after Gwendolyn Brooks. It's the Mecca. It's a housing project in Chicago. Okay. Nah, you see, that's not. The Mecca, right? You see that? Right. Now, okay, let me scare you off, right? The Mecca, to you and I, are in ISIS, right? Mecca. We should blow Howard University up. There is only one Mecca. Yeah, right. You get on Saudi Arabia saying, "Where's Mecca?" Huh?
Can I ask a question?
Oh, yeah, sure. I'll just say the you know what it is? The Mecca thing actually is Kelly Miller, and it's in an essay that's in the New Negro. It's a small little passage, but it talks about this whole thing that Howard should be a Mecca. Okay, so it's not like Malcolm X or John joke. I just threw the thing in the Gwendolyn Brooks poem. But what happened is it's based there. It goes all the way back. You see, so it's not. See, it seems different now, but you go back to the Kelly Miller essay. It's in New Negro. Okay, he mentions specifically that this should be a Mecca. Okay, and that's why you see that within Howard University there's these two streams. Yeah, time for a poem. So then we get a question from Ms. Spellman. This here is, I edited this back in 1972. This is a little journal from the Department of Afro-American Studies, and you could buy it for 35 cents. Okay. In the back here, this is what I wrote, a little poem. Howard. Between the vanishing Negro and the invisible black man, I look for change. I read that again. Between the vanishing Negro and the invisible black man, I look for change. There is what we find in terms of when you look at that Mecca, that's a straight line to Ta-Nehisi Coates. Because he's in there, he's the best. But then there's the other stream, the Mordecai Johnson, Michael Winston stream. And those have been two battles. Right. In fact, if you go back, if you go back and pull when they were having these little conferences with the faculty, and they produce a poster of Greg Carr and Michael Winston, which was not like the Malcolm X, Martin Luther King picture, but it had its own dynamic and narrative.
And of course, Winston is the current president's kind of advisor now, so that kind of tells you.
Yeah, and well, look at this. This is important. After the student protest, 68, they set up a committee to look into the demands in terms of the feasibility of having African American studies. And what happened, Mr. Bundy and others up at Yale talking about black studies, and what happened, Howard University will get a very large grant from the Ford Foundation. The people who are key in terms of putting that proposal together, Arthur P. Davis, Michael Winston, others. When it got down to who would head up the department, Michael Winston is a historian, and he's a Rayford Logan man. And so this too will pass. And so, he pulled back. And he never saw it as a discipline. So this connection between Michael Winston, this is being recorded, I can name names because I'm not employed anymore.
Please.
But what happened,
we need this.
You have to, because this is why the institution struggles. See, it struggles. In fact, you could go and probably ask yourself, why was George Barron not made president of Howard University? And then you would understand sexism within these black institutions. You ain't got to be working for Fox News. But you had a question.
I just wanted to pull the lens back a little bit and look at a broader piece about D.C. Larry Neal, as we all know,
right.
He's very good friend of ours. And Larry came to the head of the D.C.
Arts Commission, right.
under the Barry administration, and we've seen remarkable things here in Washington. And I wanted you to just talk about what was seen outside of the campus, and what influence or impact Marion Barry's number of years in office had on the Black Rights movement.
Yeah. Marion Barry is key, and I said this in a session where Greg Carr invited, Christopher was running at that time for city council, and I sat in there because they were showing Nine Lives of Marion Barry by Dana Floyd, that film, very good film. And the focus was on Marion Barry, and I think Greg opened up the questions. And I said, if you talk about Marion Barry, you have to talk about Effie Barry. Because Effie was the one really pushing the arts. She would have a gallery down at the district building. She was really doing that. But if you ask Sterling Brown, ask Marion Barry, to read Sterling Brown, his poem was Strong Man. Okay? When these cities were having financial problems, Marion Barry is the one not cutting the art budget. If you bring in and talk to Tony Giddens, who was head of the arts committee, you will see that under Barry, he gave Tony Giddens like cabinet status. Okay? The hiring of Larry Neal was radical. Okay? One of the weaknesses of Larry had no administrative skills, and so people never gave Larry Neal the respect. And since it's been documented, I'll work on that. One person I remember fighting with was Peggy Cooper Caffer, because I think at one time somebody wanted to take the name Larry Neal off the Larry Neal Writers Awards. Okay, and I fought against that. Okay? Because my argument was, we don't have awards named after black writers. We have the Penn Faulkner Prize and this and that. And I said, it would be very important to have these prizes. Now, we named the Larry Neal Prize, which is key, and it looks in the face up here now. The first person to win the Larry Neal Prize was a white person. But it was a very important white person. The person who won the prize was Alden Nielsen, A.L. Nielsen, who is probably one of the best critics of African American literature, who I've been doing a major project just interviewing him, because he has a tremendous history of not what's happening in D.C. at Howard, but the other institution that we need to mention, and that's Federal City College. Because when people got thrown out, kicked out, because they were too radical at Howard, they went to FCC. So at FCC, you had down there Gil Scott-Heron, and you had, I think you had DeMoss. You had a whole bunch of people down at FCC.
Jimmy Garrett.
So when you look at this period of D.C., the institution would be Howard, Federal City College, and the Center for Black Education, and then the New School. Okay, and then I was throwing Drum and Spear bookstore, because it's not just a bookstore. Okay, these are the things that if you were here back then, you would move around to these places. I mean, just Gil Scott-Heron down at FCC would have a direct impact on David Nicholson, who would found the Black Film Review, working with Tony Giddens, and then would become the book editor of Bookworm at the Washington Post. Okay? And then when he decided to step down, he gave me a call. He said, I don't want to give this position up. Who do you think could replace me at the Washington Post? I said, only one person can replace me, Jabari Singh. Okay? And this is when you look at certain areas and certain places, there are still places where we need work from you. Okay? And so when you look back then, book review critics, somebody who could edit, very few. If you look at right now, preservation architects, okay, very few. One of the things that needs to be supported in this city is Duke Ellington School with Margaret Reed. At the high school level, they have museum studies. And I remember telling Lonnie Bunch, I said, Lonnie, if you went over to Duke Ellington once a year and say, okay, these are high school kids. We need this, and this for the museum. Okay? You create a pipeline, and when they go to college, they know what they want to do. Okay? And then you look up, is that when you look at the staff and the meeting, you'll see black people with these skills. You see? A lot now, when you put a job application out there, some black people can't fill it. Okay? And that's why in many places, we reach a point where if you're dealing with African American studies, you're going to have to deal with the fact that it is an interracial field. Okay? If I saw the future African American studies and where it was going a couple of years ago when I was invited up to this big conference of Black studies. Elizabeth Alexander, you saw her at the Obama's inauguration. She put together this conference, and about maybe 60 people in the room. Every graduate student spoke like 2 to 3 languages. So you saw where the future was going. Okay? So if you look at right here, okay, before you guys get out, you guys can be bilingual. Okay? Now let's look at Howard. Howard several years ago phased out Portuguese. He was, I think, that guy, that nice guy, J.K., he was teaching Portuguese. Very nice guy to teach. And who would sit on a board and eliminate the philosophy department or the Portuguese? Who would do that? Okay? Even if there's just one person studying Portuguese, maybe when somebody comes to Angola, they can call over and say, okay, you're in the quadrangle, can you come over and help us talk to you? If we were just turning that out. You see? Remember I talked about Walter Rodney and the press, okay, and Nkrumah? One of the things that was taking place at Howard University that had an impact on the community, we had the Howard University Publishing Institute. The last year, before they phased it out, if you look at the makeup, there were people from South Africa. So, can you imagine if every year Howard University was sending back to South Africa people who had skills with one publishing? That's amazing. But going back to the question about the city, Howard, historically, always had this impact on D.C. I think under Marion Barrett, a lot of things happened. When we had, after 69, another one of the protests in the 80s. Might have been the one led by April Silver.
1989.
Yeah, right. What happened, I think, it was Barry and maybe Jesse Jackson.
Kathy Hughes.
Who insisted, okay, police are not going to come up on this thing. Okay? And that's what shows you Marion Barry as a student activist and now mayor, which relates to the university. But Marion Barry is key. And this is why, if you look at all the gentrification stuff going on in this erasure, you don't want to mix where you look up, you can't find anything named after Marion Barry. Okay? If you look at that Reeves building, okay, Marion Barry is responsible for that. Because as I go back to, I told you about this year, the riot, when the riots at 68 and U Street was all burned down, okay, it was Marion Barry to say, okay, we're going to put this Reeves building. Okay? Now, show the Black Arts Connection. Reeves was the lawyer defending Langston Hughes in the McCarthy period. So there is a connection between busboys and poets. I don't think Andy knows that, but there is a connection between busboys and poets on that side of it and Reeves, because Reeves was defending Langston in 1950. I mean, nobody probably makes that connection. I think it's interesting. But what happens is Marion Barry is key in terms of his support. And I remember one of the last things I had with Marion Barry was we invited him to a national poetry month thing in front of Martin Luther King Library. And you know how these politicians come, they show up, and they just go and read this. So Marion Barry gonna read a whole book of poems, man. you know, like an open mic. Hey, man, somebody else want to read. Marion Barry, get into it, man. And what was so beautiful was just Marion Barry. And then to show you Marion Barry, the guy I was sitting next to, I brought to this man, was Fisher from Israel. I met him on a thing. He was head of this Navy, whatever. And he's hearing Marion Barry having this long discussion. So I said, that's Marion Barry, because this is one thing that Marion Barry had. He's a people person. Okay? And that's something that you can't take away. You know, Marion Barry gave people jobs in the city. Okay? And that's why people love Marion Barry. And now Marion Barry has a forward. And I always defend Marion Barry because I feel that Marion Barry never stole. You know, like what's my man, Kip Patrick? They want Obama to pass. You know, or if somebody wants some Chicago Bull tickets. You know, I mean, you know, maybe because we got bad ticket teams and nobody wants them. You may go to jail because you gave somebody some Wizard tickets or 76er tickets. You know, but I'm saying, Marion Barry had addiction and stuff like that, and I even put that in the larger context because I said, you know, when you look at the people from Snake, Karen, you probably know this better than I. The thing of losing people, the violence there, to me that's probably the same way if you went to Vietnam. And we know that people, you know, went from, well, how do I deal with this? I mean, we're here, and since Frank Smith, and I remember listening to Frank Smith talking about when he left the South and the Smith, he wound up coming up to IPS. He just needed a place to go out. That's activism. You know, activism will burn you out. Okay? And I think that Marion Barry, you know, I mean, we need to hear those stories. I'll mention this. Go take my name again and Google it with Dana Flor, F-L-O-R. She did the film 9 Lives of Marion Barry, and I interviewed her. And she will talk about the making of that film and also how Marion Barry responded to that film. And very, very interesting in terms of how he sees himself. You know, it's just very, very important in terms of that movie. But I always mention Marion Barry. My wife was very close to Effie Barry because they worked at Children's Hospital together. I might have been the second Black Family Day that the council was sponsoring, and I was in charge of the tent, bringing people in. And in my tent was Effie Barry, and at that time, I wanted her to address the issue of raising a child in the public view, because all the stuff was going on about Marion Barry, and she's raising Christopher, and I wanted her to speak publicly about that. And that woman had a tremendous amount of grace, but you can't take away what he meant for the city, especially for the art and culture. It wasn't something in terms of it's a passing thing, and that's why you have the Mayor's Arts Award. Okay, I'm proud, for example, I was I think it's 78, in terms of a day being named after me. Well, that's Marion Barry, and I don't forget that, nor do I forget like the Stephen Henderson or the Owen document or the Gaston Neal. But you have to mention these names, because right now, when you're looking around for to do a term paper on, okay, there is a need to do Washington history. Okay, that's what's missing. I've been working with people at the Washington Historical Society. There's just a need for how to systematically direct people to say, okay, I'm going to look at jazz in D.C. I'm going to look at this, and there's so much to do. I mean, you just can't be doing nothing in 19 years. It's just, there's Mary Church Terrell. There's a lot. I mean, if you go around with all these cultural tourism signs, okay, there's a clue. And I'm probably tied to those. To those signs, you see all the history? I'm tied to that, too. What happens is that I'm one of the founders of the Humanities Council, and cultural tourism comes out of the Humanities Council. And so there's a lot of these ideas where I was thinking about what needs to be documented. This is what I was very much involved in. But there's a lot of work that needs to be done, and we're not doing the heavy lifting.
Certainly want to get to the student questions, but I just have to ask about C.L.R. James in D.C. Okay. How influential he was in that 70s period in the development of the Pan-African movement out of D.C.
Yeah, C.L.R. James is very important. If you want to know everything about C.L.R. James, just go to the show that I did last week on WPFW. You go to WPFWFM.org, WPFWFM.org. You go to archive shows, and then just scroll down to last Thursday, and I'm interviewing Paul Buell. Paul reminded me that I had a lot to do with that, because Sterling Brown, as I mentioned in the interview, I first encountered Sterling Brown when he was teaching a class on Pan-Africanism for the African Studies Department. Okay, so that might have been like around 1970. And I remember my roommate, Reggie Hudgens, who was in that class. That's how I got pulled up into him. Reggie Hudgens got up and asked a question. And Mr. James said, Mr. Hudgens, please tell the class about the role of the police in society. And please hear the rest of the people. And he was telling me, no, it's not. They're not here to protect people. They're here to protect property. With the whole thing, was very, very specific. But, that was my introduction to him. What I've been documenting through Alden Nielsen, the first Larry Neal winner, I've been interviewing Alden Nielsen for over a year now. He was at Federal City College, okay? He became very much like a C.L.R. James person. He's written a lot about C.L.R. James. I knew C.L.R. James when he was living in the Chastleton on 16th Street. And what I would do is I would go and bring Mr. James his books to read. And everybody said I messed up with C.L.R. James because I was bringing Entezaki Sean Gay and Alice Walker. Which he found very. I was giving him all these women writers. And I remember there was a big argument, probably taped, because it was in Ackland Lynch's house. There was a big argument because at that time, Entezaki for colored girls was very, very controversial. Don Lee, for example, was organizing protests in Chicago against that play. It was a lot of it had to do with Bo Willie dropping the kids out the window. Everybody thought it was anti-male, it was lesbian, all that stuff was going on. C.L.R. James was here reading that material, okay? And that was a thing where he had an impact probably directly on many of the people that have helped with the organizing of the Sixth Pan-African Congress. So you're talking about Sandra Hill, Sylvia Hill, Kathy Llewellyn, Cecily Counts. A lot of those individuals are here, okay? And that's just a thing in terms of C.L.R. James. I mentioned in the interview, I remember being on the stage at Crampton Auditorium where it's me, Leon DeMar to C.L.R. James, and I never forgot that, and each one of those individuals I have a direct relationship to. Damas would give his last, if you don't know, Leon Damas was the father of negritude. And it's very important if you are studying the Harlem Renaissance movement that you go from the movement and realize it doesn't end in the United States. It actually only skips over the Atlantic and affects a whole generation of young students from the Caribbean and Africa in the 1930s to get this negritude movement. Some of those individuals will go to Africa and lead their own independence movement. So you see someone like Leopold Senghor becoming head of synagogue. Okay, so you have this connection. And I was very much aware in terms of, okay, this is Damas, you know, and what he represents. And here's C.L.R. James, what he represents.
Damas who taught at Howard.
It's Damas who taught Damas. And Damas who taught hell at Howard, because Damas was head of African study, and some of the folks there said, well, he's not African. You know? You know? I mean, these are the things we got, you know. But Damas would give his last speech at Washington Daniel Library.
Wow.
Okay? And in his last speech, I got it was published in President's African. He would say, you know, since you're recording it, he would say, it is very important that you listen to Ethelbert Miller. I got the document. I'm a literary activist. He says that, you know. In preparation for the show I just did on C.L.R. James, I have a bad habit of sticking papers and stuff in books. And when I pulled out my C.L.R. James book, there was a number of letters that popped out of the book from C.L.R. James. And some of it was me helping him do his research and stuff when he was in London. And then, you know, I remember taking my wife to see C.L.R. James. And this tells you about the C.L.R. James. He always would be in bed with the TV going on, like looking at the soap operas, right? Right? And he'll talk to me, right? Then he turned and talked to my wife and said, where do you work? What do you do? And I wrote in the journal. I read in the journal. Do you have a journal? How many pages in the journal? It was very specific. The same way, for example, me and James Early would go over when he was at the Castleton, and these are in the resource center. We interviewed him, okay? And see how you asked me a question? Mm-hmm. I remember James Early asked me a question. Well, Mr. James, you did such and such in 1935. It was October 5th, 1934. See how I'm here talking? C.L.R. would come in and say, I'm going to speak for 31 minutes. And see, you don't need to say that. You know he's going to put his hat on. And the only person I've seen do that is Miles Davis. Miles Davis had the band going. As soon as he picked up his hat, band, boom. You know, but C.L.R. James had that. But what are you saying? He is teaching you that you have to be exact. And this is what I learned. This one thing I learned about C.L.R. James was very helpful to when I was doing travel outside the United States. If you ask C.L.R. James a question and you did not formulate correctly, he did not answer the question until he corrected it. Okay? That is very important. Now, I show you who I saw do this. Dusty Baker, the manager of the National, after one of the games, Mike Reporter asked him a question about why he took a picture out. And Dusty said, why did you ask me that question? Do you know why you asked me that? You know, I know the answer, but I want to know why. Do you know why you asked the question? You know, it was this teaching moment. Okay, and let me show you what happened. I'm in Saudi Arabia. No, I'm in Iraq. I'm in Iraq. And someone, I'm in the lobby hotel doing the interview right here. And the person was like, Mr. Miller, we want to know what you think about the Zionist regime about that, right? That's it. That's the question. I'm overseas. This is where it's not a Paul Robeson moment. I know I don't criticize U.S. foreign policy overseas. Okay? I've learned that from Paul Robeson. And so what happened, I corrected the report. I said, what do you mean by Zionist regime? He said, I'll ask you what, you asked me a question about Israel, but I'm not going to use your definition. Now, I might agree with you, but I'm not going to say that publicly because I know that could be lifted out of context. I answered his question. What was the question? You see? And when you go overseas, at least for me, you know, the trips are high level, high level trips. And so I'm very much aware, of what I'm saying, what I'm promoting, what I'm discussing. And that's my advice to you as young activists. And when you give interviews, how you answer the question. We're going to take some questions.
Yes. You want to read one from the students?
Yes. This question is from Kenya Hall, who's a sophomore, English major, philosophy minor from Houston, Texas. In your interview with Nabir K. Ghosh, You briefly mentioned W.E.B. Du Bois's double consciousness theory and the fact that there are more than two consciousnesses, identities. What are your identities and how do you organize them? Are you black first, a man, or a poet, etc.?
I got the idea, and this is where you learn from people that you come in contact with. One person I knew and interviewed was Audre Lorde. And Audre Lorde talks about her many selves. One book I would put at required reading would probably be Sister Outsider, which is a very important essay. And so I saw that. I saw what was happening in terms of if you pull somebody aside today, they may have a triple identity. They may be a Muslim, American, and black. It's a complex. Somebody may say, I'm a lesbian. And that's something that we didn't see that before. You see? And so we have to be aware of that. Same way, for example, it's not just black and white. Identity is very, very complicated now. And this is why, to some extent, we're at a point now where Obama is African American. You see, more than I'm African American. You see? Or, for example, or you come from the West Indies and your key identity is the fact that you're Jamaican. You see? Or what became problematic during the time of the Cuban Revolution, where because Fidel and Che and Camilo, everybody building this whole Cuban identity, okay? When the black movement is going on in the U.S. and people hijacking planes and coming to Havana, Cuba began to sort of downplay this Afro-Cuban thing because we're all Cuban. Okay? They downplay that because it seems very divided. We're trying to build this one identity Cuban people, and now people growing afros and want to be there. And it isn't until Cuba comes to the defense of Angola that, I think the invasion into South Africa and they begin to send troops, part of foreign policy. And Fidel, in one of his long speeches, as they're sending troops to the Horn of Africa and Angola, they begin to say, this is very important because we can trace the slaves that came over and going back. Here the slaves came from Angola, now they're going back to defend the country. So he was able to use that to emphasize something that in the early days of the revolution, they downplayed. Okay, but you can see right here, even within Cuba, two identities became complicated. Now, when you look at the Black Lives Matter, it's almost three identities. At least regardless. The key is that they came out of labor movement, domestic workers, and the gay movement. Okay? And so when you talk about this Black Lives Matter, you can't just overlook the fact that they're also gay leaders. You see? So if you talk to them about, how they use it, and you see that being very much a part of, the movement. You see? They're not denying that. Now, some people following them may have some problems, but they themselves, okay, if you go and go to those interviews, okay, don't just pick through it, but really, this is what they say. They're gay activists also. And they were pretty much doing that before they were doing the Black Lives Matter. That comes after Ferguson and some of the other stuff. They were activists before. You see, and this is very important that when you see the leaders of this movement, you begin to realize that they were connected to other things and the other part of their identity. And what happens, some people, they can't separate. Okay, and shouldn't. You see? And then I saw the future where I was in a bank, in a PNC bank, and I was behind an older black woman, and she turned to me and she said, I'm Christian, You know what how you somewhere you say you're AKA or Delta. What I mean? For example, that you go some places, your sorority, I'm Omega. That's your first. You might be black, but I'm Omega till you die, right? You know what I'm saying? So, and I'm saying because that is a key part. You pledge, that's a key part. You see, and the complexity of it isn't that simple. And then it fluctuates. If you go back to the 1970s, which we were talking about, on the cover of New York Magazine around 1970, was a big fair-skinned black woman with a big afro and the whole thing like mulatto power. Come here, black with mulatto power. And then you bring that all the way up to Tiger Woods, whatever he wants to do. But these are the things in terms of identity, which is ongoing. And then you, as an individual, you have to decide what's going to be good for you. And the key thing you will know is when you become a mother or father, okay, what is going to be how you're going to raise your child. Okay, if you're a Muslim family right now, that can be a problem. Your daughter may not want to wear a hijab. Okay, you have some people they don't want to speak Spanish. All these things they downplay that that part of their identity. Especially if you're in like some little small town in Idaho. You say, what's your name? Frank. You may be Muhammad, but it's Frank today. Or Donald. You know what I'm saying? But these are the things that you have to realize, and it's fluid. You see, if you look at identity, just look at within our community how the names have changed. here we're African. Then when we wanted to stay here, that we kicked back, we became like colored. And then colored to like Negro, and then from Afro, to African American, Black, all those things at any particular time represent a different level of consciousness. Okay? And it's not going to be static. Okay? So you see right now, look at how many people are going to say they're Black Republicans. They're going to say they want jobs, they'll trickle downstairs, whatever. They're going to get something. But you're going to see all of a sudden that emerging of being Black Republican and being now and whatever, People like, what did they say with Ben Carson? The fact that you can separate two brains doesn't mean you have one. Well, that's true. But what I'm saying, these are the things that have a lot to do with identity, because when you go back, when I was coming, identity was around these terms. We knew who the Negroes were. Okay? We knew who the Negroes were. So those terms were very political and had a lot to do with identity, who we thought you identified with. And that's why somebody, Clarence Thomas, he's a Negro. And Emerge Magazine will put like a little watermelon hat on himself. But what happens, that's still there. And you have to make sure as young people, you don't lock people in negative ways. Okay? And that's the thing in terms of any type of label, any sort of part of your identity. Your identity is very fluid, just like the music.
We have just enough time for maybe one or two questions from the floor, but you'll have to step up to ask your question so we can get the audio. And maybe you would oblige us with some poetry to close us out after the questions.
All right, sure.
And we wanted to have poems that you've written that embody the feeling of being in D.C. During the time period that we're discussing.
What happened, to show you, when I left Howard University, when I'm a student at Howard University, my first poetry reading is at All Saints Church, 16 in Harvard. And the people I'm reading with is Carolyn Rogers, Askia Muhammad Touré, Ebon. Person I would be very nice to me, I was still in touch with, would be a musician, Marion Brown, makes his little instruments and stuff, like John Coltrane. That was my introduction in terms of my first read. I was still in the dorm, and I was reading poetry in the city. But as I laid the campus of Howard University, and I moved into the city, I wound up living in Adams Morgan. And many people who knew me back then were from El Salvador and Nicaragua, and my work completely changed. So if somebody says, okay, what's the work that you were writing when you were in D.C., a lot of it was dealing with Central America. It got so much that I remember I had a reading at a Black church, and I just got to read my work. And, I was looking at the audience, and they were like, what's going on? And I said, well, I got to find a poem with Jesus. Because I had just moved, I wasn't relating. But, when I look at my work and how the city has affected me, it affected me because I was interacting with that part of D.C. I was interacting with El Salvador. A lot of my poems in El Salvador got translated into Spanish. Some of the young kids were that. Some of the schools I go in, the work is there. That's my D.C. work. I've written pretty much my memoir, which describes D.C. a lot more. Because this is my home. I write about my children and things like that. So I see my children as Washingtonians. I wrote a piece for the Hill Rag, which was called Farthing Gentrification. And I felt that my daughter has to be the type of person that this city keeps. Okay? And I say that because my daughter went to Edinburgh private school, went up to BU, got to do law school, and she lives in Anacostia. Okay? And you bring her in here. I remember she's funny. So, but was in there, and so she said, Daddy, I'm on the green line. Go on, got my book. Get the Anacostia, and the door's open. And I look out the window, and there's a policeman with a gun running down the platform. And everybody's all up looking out the window, and that's when I knew I was middle class. I sat back there, I met my book, and she's just telling these stories. But what happened is, I'm glad she's there because, her consciousness is one in which, and this is what I did. I go and I said to many people I know contact, I said, I want my daughter to sit on these boards, pro bono or whatever, she's very much engaged, jogging with people and everything, because I said, you have to make this difference. Now, of course, what happens is that she's a little more conservative, okay? But what happens is that now, because she has a son, she's really dealing with the school situation. She's really dealing with the school situation. And so I've been writing about that in terms of the city. My son now is working in one of the D.C. high schools. We came back to D.C. to work in the schools. And so, I'm seeing those, I'm getting hearing those stories up close. And those are interesting. And I'm trying to write about that, And so I think when I think about Washington, D.C., it appears more in my prose and in my memoirs and in my poetry. The other thing I'm probably more proud of, and working on this right now, in the city of Washington, there's probably about 12 sites in which either my work or face is represented. So I'm trying to create this sort of tour. So like if you come out of the DuPont Circle Metro, you see my poem on the bench. You're in front of the Petworth Metro, you see my poem on the leaf. If you're out of the Anacostia Art Center, there's a poem I wrote about Frederick Douglass that sits in the back. You go to Busboys and Poets, 50Ks, what we call the Big Head. But there's places in like the homeless shelter, La Casa, where there's poems that they use when people come in. And I'm very proud of my work being that part of the city because I wasn't born here. Okay? But this is the home that I made. This is where my children were born. And I want to have that impact on the city. And I want to make sure that if I do that, where I'm going, I'm always talking about what's going on around the Owen Dotson and people like that, because I don't want their work to be forgotten. And it happens. I mean, right now, I'm 66 this month. And when I go down and look at some of the posters from some of the writers' conferences, okay, from, say, starting with like 72 or 73, most of the people, I'm like one of the living. Of course, I was like 22, 24, but it's amazing how many people are deceased. And as scholars, you have to make sure you begin to do the critical work. Okay? Don't do another article or paper on Nicky Giovanni. Maybe do Mary Evans or somebody, or Sarah Webster Fabio. There's a whole bunch of people that need. And I'm taking that. I just got finished this year doing a long article on June Jordan. And people, I left Alicia Garcia. I had to tell. Alicia Garcia has June Jordan's poem about my right. It had tattooed. So when she was here, I joked her. I said, Alicia, I edited that poem, and it is. And I edited it, if you look at it, it's June sent me a poem. I thought the ending was very corny, and we took the ending off, But all of this is in our letters that are at the University of Minnesota, So anybody who's doing a thing on June will see those letters, and we're one of the people. Like if I go through these poems, there are a number of poems that, when you pick up my book, it's responsive to a poem that June wrote, or back and forth, And that's another person dealing with the many selves. So I would encourage that. But in terms of DC poetry, I really don't have it, but I do have some work that I find is very important, and maybe read one that might be instructional. I think this is a better one because it's not lyrical. But it's in 5 sections, and I think if I can say anything today, it would all be in this poem, okay? And I'll break down each section because I know this has happened to you. It's called 5 Shards of Whiteness Cutting into Black. 1, an empty seat next to a black person on a crowded bus. White people standing, but not too close. Welcome to the fear of city. You know how you're on the bus? The seat there. And nobody would sit, and then somebody else, they sit down, like they don't sit next to you. So that's 1. 2, coins dropped from white hands into black hands. Thank God for gravity. It keeps one from touching. One time you were small, an owner would not want to touch your hand, drop the coins, or just throw the change at you. And that's how I was raised. Like, somebody told you never go back here. But that's 1. 3rd, black bodies waiting patiently in line in front of a counter. Suddenly, a white person arrives and goes to the front of the line. No excuses and no excuse. Black means a red hot coal. Let's stand back and not get burned. You know how people, you be online, the white people just go, oh, I didn't see you. I like that one. So my white person sat on my wife in the theater, didn't see him. 4, no matter how intelligent the black words are, the white ears will only talk about the rhythm, the sound of it, that dancing sound, oh, that drum, that banjo in those plantation days. Creative writing class, right? So you leave Howard and you enroll in a creative writing program for X amount of money. right? You're in your little class, and for 3 weeks, white kids and people are sharing their work, and you're getting into the structured analysis, and then you share your work. And there's a little silence, and then someone says, I like how you read that. It's filled with a lot of rhythm. And how much are you paying? Right, okay. Now, this is the one I like the most. 5. In a business room, okay, this is what you guys are going to face when you graduate. In a business room, a black voice speaks and makes several excellent points. Seconds later, a white voice explains what the black voice is trying to say. Everyone listens to the echo. You know that? You're there. What Josh is trying to say. I'm saying, you know what happened? No. This, if you're successful as business people or corporate, this is going to happen to you. You're going to, and you could be cheering the meeting. And someone says, you know what you're trying? Get out of here with that. It happens all the time. So that's, I could read something there, but, because we're students, and take, I'm not making this up. You might leave here and you got to take a little bus, and this will happen, and this will happen when you go to the shop. This will happen when you're standing on the line. This will happen when you're in a meeting. You see? And this is the thing where it's different. One of the things which is so funny is Barack Obama's very first press conference. I don't know if it made the highlight, but what happened is his first press conference, right? And he comes in, and everybody stands up and goes, whoa! It is the funniest thing. It's his first press conference. Everybody says, whoa! I'm the president. Small things like that are funny, but when you get other things, where somebody is going to yell, while he's going to say to you, you're lying. No, you don't respect, you really respect your office. You see? But these are things that sometimes you go out, you're professional, and you're disrespected. Or your day is messed up. You go shopping for your family, you get your groceries, and an incident like that happens. And that's when you go home, you're talking about that. Not the fact that your food is fresh or whatever, but the fact that this happened to you. Or you're heading up an organization, and this is how you treat it in the meeting. Okay? And that's a thing where we talk about why you should major in African-American studies or things of that sort. It's so that you can survive the day-to-day. It's not like you got to quote the boys every minute, but the fact of the matter, you got to know how to navigate, these things every single day. And you have to do it in terms of the people coming after you and what you're involved in. You see me? I'm here today because in the midst of the student protest, this guy Dave from Philadelphia, the building protest, 669, he had a gun. We're right in the door of Coca-Cola. In the door, I had a gun. And I said, but I just want to call his attention. I don't want to kill anybody. And then, this is where that old voice in my mother's voice in there. You're running with the wrong crowd. You go back to your room and she'll say, we didn't send you down there for that. That gave you, that protects you. There's certain things that you're left home with that your parents gave you that moral compass, okay? And don't compromise it with any foolishness. You have to know. And now there's times where you have to be like a Julian Bond and drop out of school and change America. You have to know when that comes, okay? I knew I wasn't going to shoot somebody for cohabitation. Go back and write a poem. But I'm not doing that right now. But you'll have to be tested around it. And one of the most beautiful things is when you look up, I'll do with April Silver and Ross Barack. April was at my desk. And she's coming, because I knew her as a poet. April, and they said, they're going to disrupt Charter Day with Bill Cosby speaking back then. And I said to her, me being older, I said, April, you don't mess with the Negro's pageantry. You just stay in the robe and you're going to disrupt because you have a problem, with that. No. And I had saw a year before a student I was mentoring, boy, nice, brilliant brother. He decided when they were Howard was giving honorary degree to Tubman from Liberia, him and with one other guy decided they were going to disrupt Charter Day. Now, nobody knew what was going on in Liberia, except these two guys. Do you know that brother disrupted that Charter Day And he lived down in the snow hall, and his stuff was in the hall when he got back, you know. And so I was trying to advise April. I hadn't seen Ron in a minute, but April, I said, April, and they did it, and they were successful, you know. And that's why sometimes your movement, you can't lift it up. You have to do what's right, but you have to have a moral compass, and you have to filter that out. And your many cells may help you figure that out, you know. But that's one of the things I always felt being at Howard. Your first 2 weeks can be key. Because you can fall in with the worst crowd. Yeah, I fell in with the militants and stuff. Okay, then I also fell in for the people who want to run for student government. You know, and the best thing that happened to me is I lost the election. See how Hillary Clinton won? Lost the election. That was me. You know, I thought I had the election, and everybody went to the pen relays. I just remember everybody go vote for you, and I lost, right? And I lost to Charlie Goodman. It was the best thing that happened to me because if I had won that election, I probably would be in the Black Caucus or something. You know, I was a student government leader, you know, Black Caucus. Thank God I didn't go that way. But anyway, I'll end on that note. I had a nice time here. See everybody.
Thank you.
And if I can help anybody, let me know.
Thank you so much.